Hello, my friends. Good afternoon. I wanted to stop by and share a couple of energetic themes arising currently along the landscape of my awareness. And I have had the benefit, the opportunity, um, as part of my nature, as we all do, that when we begin to start tuning into this life intelligence that is imbuing everything that we see, that we're plugging into an energetic pattern of intelligence unfolding, and that when we do that intentionally, and we do that knowing that there's so much information available at any time about our own evolution, about our own growth, um, about our next steps, and how we will be called to step into our next embodiment of consciousness, for lack of a better terminology. And when you begin to expand this trust in this life force, and that there is this bigger pattern going on below our conscious mind that thinks it knows everything, when it is simply making up stories the best it can to explain things that it's being pulled into, and that we can um, go go through, choose to go through consciously, or we can go kicking and screaming as a helpless, powerless victim. And there's some aspect about um, becoming intimately familiar with this power called consciousness. And as we do, our level of awareness expands. So, one of my teachers just this week was talking about parallel realities. She didn't use that word, but that's what she was talking about. And I'll tell you how and why. She said she lived in Hollywood for many years, and she said there, um, one part of town, there's these creatives, artists, talking about what they're creating and what projects they're working on, and then 2 streets away, there are people taking drugs, shooting each other, and those worlds don't meet because they're not available for each other. And so it's the same way with our consciousness. When we begin to expand our consciousness, that means we start tuning into the levels of energy and outside of just what the construction of our personality or our mind has been telling us. Because the mind or the ego's job is to recreate certainty. And it's not necessarily based on truth with a capital T. It's based on a personal history, and it is kind of a bunch of collection of pictures that were frozen in time that create a certain energy signature called you, and that you created it unknowingly because you didn't know that you were actually able to do that, but that's what you were doing. That's what we all have been doing. And yet we have felt powerless and out of effect, and like a victim, like the world's happening to us. And for example, people who have situations in their life most of the time aren't new. right? They keep creating the same situation with their job, or they keep creating these same relationships in their intimate partnerships, or they keep continuing their relationship with the money. And then they began to, well, I don't say began because this started a long time ago. Um, a lack of self trust, a lack of self belief, a lack of trust in life. And then there is this disconnect from our own creative process that something happened in our life and it created a negative charge in our bio field because we consist of many different types of energetic fields. We have our physical body, we have our mental body, we have our emotional body, we have our spiritual body, and they're not separate, they're all connected. But like there are different levels of dimensional reality. And most of us have been trained to only see and validate the physical realm. And needless to say, we are in a physical body, but we have a whole vast array of emotional, energetic responses um, and spiritual uh, realities. And so, for example, I'm sure you have had, hopefully, I hope that you have had the opportunity to see a beautiful sunset or a gorgeous natural landscape or an animal or a new baby or someone that you love so much that you were taken out of yourself into a state of pure awe. And really, what you were awing at was not the object or the thing in front of you, but your experience of it was just an opportunity to transcend the little part of you that has kept you in boxes and restrictions and rights and wrongs and requirements and judgments and criticisms. And the list is endless of how this little part of ourselves has been um, given the keys to our lives. And we're like, wait a minute. Wait a minute. And so I've had this conversations, I don't even know how many times, of people, myself. And why do I keep creating this situation? It's not what I want. I deserve more than this. And you do. And so what is causing this recreation of suffering, of discontent, of upset, of not getting what you want again? So I'd like you to imagine that as we are developing and growing into what becomes our personality, we have a lot of help and there's a lot of steps along the way. And really, what the construction of the personality, this ego, is a record. It is an emotional record and adaptive responses to being pulled out of our center, to being pulled into unconsciousness in order to survive, or at least that's what our brain told us. So you can imagine yourself, or you've maybe witnessed um, children around you, or maybe you're a parent and you um, or having a certain experience, and the child next to you or the one that you were observing was having another experience. And that child's version of reality often gets put aside in, in order to adapt to the outer reality of the person in charge, in this case often the parent, whether it is in alignment with their life energy or not. And so when we are pulled out of our center constantly, it becomes a way of being. And it's not safe for us to be in our energy. In fact, it is safer as far as in a biological evolutionary perspective to be out of center, to be disconnected from ourselves. Because often when we are connected, um, to ourselves as children, in our minds of a young, undeveloped nervous system, it's either connection with self or connection with my caretaker, which is my lifeline to survival. And I'm going to pick my outward connection because I don't have the ability to generate my own sense of safety and well being because I haven't learned how. And guess what? I never will in this paradigm. I will continually put it out on the people and things around me to determine my sense of safety and well being, including my self image, my job title, my status, my possessions, and all the things that we've been conditioned to place our worth and our value upon. And so, this energy signature is built out of poverty thinking. It's like either I can stay connected to myself or I can be connected to my caregiver, but I can't have both. And these are dysfunctional, energetic dynamics based on power structures, power outside, power of other. And we have been developing through this phase of our humanity. And now we are getting an opportunity to step in a new phase of our humanity that is based on wealth and abundant models where we can have this and that, where instead of one person getting what they want, the other person, like we have to have a winner, we have to have a loser, but we can't have two winners, right? And so, on a very fundamental level, um, that's based on the idea that there's not enough. And so we are in the process of giving up this paradigm because it is not in the service of the expansion and growth of our life. I mean, it clearly served a purpose at one time in our evolution, but we've hit the ceiling. And so we are dying to that. We are letting that go, and we're in the midst. We haven't made the leap yet. Some people have. They're like, hey, come on over. It looks real good over here. I don't have to decide anymore between having this or that. I don't have to decide whether I can choose freedom or restriction because it was a false choice anyway. It wasn't even based on reality. It was based on a construct of a limited mind. That's all they saw as possible. And so that causes a lot of conflict. It causes a lot of strife. It causes a lot of competition. It causes a lot of a hierarchical structure of power. And that served a certain construction of reality. And it produced a certain experience of reality. But the idea that I'm going to go out and start changing the world when I'm not willing to do the inner work that it takes to transform myself, how am I going to transform the world? And so, this process that has been going on largely in my life for many years now, that I did not have the words to share with people. There was no vocabulary for it in the family that I was raised in and the profession in which I was working in. There were like conversations around the sidelines of it. But most people that I was surrounded with couldn't hear the kinds of conversations um, that are necessary in order to hold this new unfolding of reality that's happening. And so I have uh, witnessed this week, these past probably 3 weeks, that there has me personally as plugging into source and how this energy is happening, how this energy is unfolding, that when you don't have to watch the news because you can already connect with what's happening. You don't need to turn on the 5 o'clock news because you're directly related to source. And I'm not saying that you shouldn't watch the news or that you shouldn't be informed. I'm not saying any of that. What I'm saying is that the nature of reality is such that when you speak things into the space of consciousness, which is you, your whole reality, everything you see is consciousness and it's you experiencing it. And without your consciousness, they're experiencing it. Does it really exist? I don't know. So the idea that every thought, every word, every action that we have and that we put into the space of consciousness has an effect. And there has been a repression of anything that is not of this intellectual processing, this mind. For the most part, there are lots of people who have their own integrative awareness practices, whether they call them that or not. I realized that that's what I had been doing, and that's the name that I gave it because as I was doing my own healing, as I was doing my own transformation, I began to witness that it's not just for me, it's the entire field of consciousness which is transforming. And so the more of us who actually begin to step into the role of creator as co-creator with consciousness, as begin to expand their ability to delve into the multiple realms, like for example speaking the language of spirit. And this is the language of metaphor, of myth, of storytelling, of poetry, of song, of music. It doesn't follow linear rules of the logical mind, but it contains signatures and energetic signatures of information of the spirit, which has been the realm of what has been repressed into the underground, um, which is the divine feminine. Uh, she is uncontainable in words and in language. And this has been the realm of spirituality and the church. Every world tradition, unfortunately, It has been often appropriated by the mind, by the ego, by the personality, losing its true original mm, purpose, which was to contain and have a ritual celebration of the life force, of the life spirit, of the life giving spirit, which is connected to the divine feminine. And so there has been a massive clearing of the waters of consciousness, because it is like, it is not physical water, it is an energetic wave of infinite life force energy, like a stream of energy. Call this live streaming, for example. We are live streaming, and the life stream of infinite life force is moving through us, through the programs, the imprints. You could call them karmic patterns that we brought with us in consciousness through our family lines, that we've embodied physically, whether in, conditions that we've inherited. That information is encoded in our DNA, and then um, and it is a code of information. Everything is energy encoded with information, and it has that energy signature. And so when we're creating these uncomfortable or undesired conditions, there's part of us that desires that, else it wouldn't be there. And the desire part is a distortion of the life field that's turned against itself in order to survive. At least that was the intent. That if I turn life against itself, I will be able to connect with the outside source. I won't be able to connect to mine anymore because it's not safe. That's not the way they do things here. I have to disconnect from my source, and I have to try to get it from others in situations and jobs through my money. I have to plug into the outside world constantly because I don't have my own Wi-Fi connection. I had to shut that off and even forget that I ever had it available. And so when we begin to turn back in, to unplug from those outside power fields, which aren't actually authentic to our being, they are like a very rigged, right? We had to get it from somewhere because we couldn't connect to ourselves anymore. That was a no-no. Pissed people off, it upset them because they had been disconnected from their life force. So why should you get to be connected to it? And this is the poverty mindset, that I have to get it from somewhere. And this is a level of unconsciousness. It's a failure, not consciously, of realizing our own nature, our own design, and how we were meant to have access to all the wealth, starting with our own life energy. And so when we turn against our own life energy, when we disconnect from it, there's going to be consequences, whether that's a physical ailment, a chronic condition, an emotional or mental dis-ease, whether that's addiction or anxiety or compulsive behaviors, um, rages, and then trying to find something to medicate that, to tone it down, to control it. And so we have control over control over control without ever having an opportunity, uh, for many of us who have just been caught up in the hamster wheel of just trying to survive, unless you've created a niche, a practice for yourself where you can turn inside and you can meditate and you can go out in nature and you can tune in and you begin to build a new relationship with yourself, one where you begin to build a sense of trust with that inner knowing, that you actually do have access to it and it is yours and you can use it. And you don't have to apologize to other people who don't know how. And that when you begin this process, you will begin to notice that these energetic imprints that have been attracting these undesirable conditions in your life are there as a product of being knocked off center. And that pain and that memory, that energetic disharmony is still resonating in your space because it was never recognized as harmful. It was never recognized as the loss of what it was. It was never recognized as life being hurt. And if there's no awareness around that on one level with the mind, that gets stuck into the level of awareness that can hold it, which is our bodies. And our bodies will hold all of this awareness. And then our bodies start to break down. We start to have different diseases, different conditions, different pains and aches in our bodies, because our body cannot hold it forever, right? That's why so many people have the physical, their bodies trying to wake them up. And so when we begin to address that energy signature at a cellular level, our cells remember all of it. It's recorded there. The disharmony is recorded there. So, for example, this past 3 weeks, I've been dealing with a physical condition. It's been quite mild, but it's just like a constant discomfort, irritation. That's what it is. And so I had the opportunity to delve into that for the last 3 weeks and to have a sacred conversation with that symptom, because that symptom is a condition, and the condition is a product of a pattern of energy, which is often held in our intellect, in our mind. That's where it starts. And then it filters down into more dense expressions and the word becomes flesh. The thought becomes embodied. And if it's the imperfect thought or the imperfect word, that means it's not based on the truth of who we are. It creates separation and disharmony. First in our psyches, and in our spirits, and in our body. So I had a conversation with this symptom, and it told me that the symptom was the message. I experience irritation and annoyance with my emotions. with my experience because it doesn't fit in any boxes. It doesn't fit in any pictures. But my mind keeps trying to make my experience and my emotions fit in pre-existing boxes, right, wrong, good or bad. You know, sh- is it, do I have permission to feel this way or not? You know, and so this causes anxiety in the organism at every level, or it reveals the anxiety at every level. And so somewhere, I got this crazy message that how I felt in my experience in life was inconvenient. And not only was it inconvenient, it was annoying. And so that energy signature is vibrating in my biofield. And because it's not the truth with a capital T, it's one small slice of an experience of someone that had put that into the field of consciousness. And I resonated with that message. I must be irritating. My experience is annoying. And then I took that on. And then I began to embody it. And that's just one small example of how we manifest unconsciously. And until we restore balance at that cellular level, because our body just reflects the disharmony, the disconnection, the being off of balance. That is the definition of health, homeostasis. And so we get to help ourselves by remembering the language of our bodies and the language of spirit, which is not confined to what the mind wants to fit it in. The mind has a purpose, but it's not the central guiding force of our life. It is meant to serve our life force, not to restrict it or jail it or create. It's like it's taken a good intention way over the top to where the medicine has become the poison and we're it. We are the poison and we are the medicine. And that if we learn and begin to remember that all transformation, all healing is possible through us when we make ourselves available for it. And in order to do that, we're going to have to expand what we see as the self. And so just, I think it was September, I did my first summit on the construction of the self, the quantum integration series. And I had 8 different speakers talking from 8 different perspectives about how they support and share with people different constructs for stretching and expanding this idea of the self. And when you do, the expansion of your perspective and what's possible, you begin to step into a whole new way of being that you didn't see available before because you didn't even know it was there. So it is a process of beginning to step back into the fullness of our own humanity and remembering how to do that. And this is related to this image of the Christ child, or the um, the beginner's mind, that level of innocence that is not marred or imprinted already with what's possible and what's not possible, because the mind wants to just be right. It doesn't necessarily want to be happy. And so, in order to recover the fullness of who we are, we have to unlearn all of the things we learned about how it is to be, because we don't live through our mind. We survive through our mind. In order to fully live, we have to let go of living inside restrictive realms in which our mind gives us pictures of what's okay and what's not okay. And that was a certain level of our development, our conscious development. And now we've gotten to the point where we can trust ourselves, and that we probably could have trusted ourselves a lot more long ago, but we didn't know. We don't know until we know. And so I just wanted to come on and share this with you. If you are in the muck, if you feel like you are in the thick of things, if you are experiencing any level of pain or suffering, instead of fighting it, instead of resisting it, instead of asking, why me? Why does this always happen to me? Ask yourself, why is this happening for me? What is my body trying to tell me? What is my higher consciousness trying to get through my thick skull that I won't listen to unless it really hurts and it gets my attention and drags me to my knees, to where I have to surrender to something bigger than my mind can see? Instead of doing it that way, which is filled of crisis and suffering, maybe, just maybe, we could start working in cooperation with our spirits and our emotions and our body. And we can begin to call that all back in and begin to listen very carefully with our hearts and listen to what life is wanting us to know, because all the answers are available. Even if Google was inactive or it wasn't working, like, how did the world function for a millennia or millennias without Google? How did this information that is just being proven by science right now, science are like, oh my gosh, I don't know how they knew how to build the pyramids. I don't know how they knew how to use sound to heal. Because now we can prove that sound actually affects matter and alters its shape. And I could go on, right? Because this information is available through the infinite connection of life. We, if we're not plugged in, we can't access the information. If we're disconnected and we're constantly trying to get it outside of us, our frustration might cause us to resign, to give up, to say, what's the use? I guess I'm just a dreamer. I guess this is just the way life is, and I should accept it. But maybe, maybe all of that reasoning process is only a product of an individual not realizing their place in the expanse of consciousness. Because if they did, they would be able to access the resources that are available inside. And they would be able to step into a paradigm of abundance and joy and love and connection and limitless possibility, because that's what's there. But if I can focus everybody's attention outside, if I can get everyone to try to struggle, to compete, to get caught up and entangled in conflict and suffering and pain, they'll be so busy, they'll never even consider looking within. And so this awakening is happening right now, and we can all speed it up. We can go as fast or as slow as we'd like. There's no right or wrong. It's simply a matter of learning to rebuild that trust with yourself, that confidence, that inner knowing, beginning to trust your own intuition. And I'll tell you, there is a huge hurdle, and it's easy to get pulled in to the low density emotions of hopelessness, of fear, of confusion. If you let yourself, and there's no accusation here, it happens because there's a resonance in our bodies. And so when we begin to continually clear that life stream of these inherited imprints that we brought with us, once we took a body, and many of us took a body to help clear this out, like this is where it stops with me. I chose to come here and clean this out for my inherited bloodline. And that's so when people ask me what I do and I say I'm a life coach, it doesn't even begin to explain, because it's not simply about having the job that you want, although the ego loves that, having the car that you want, although the ego loves that. If that's what attracts you to life coaching, then let it be. But underneath that, once you really delve into this work, you realize that all of those material possessions, all of those things that the ego wants, are based on having a sense of power, because most people feel powerless. And the reason why they feel powerless is because they're disconnected from their own source, and so they have to get it outside. And so it goes. So it's funny, it's a little bit funny when people ask me what I do. I don't know quite what to tell them, except that I am not only clearing inherited patterns from my bloodline, but consciousness itself. And it looks personal because I'm doing it I'm doing it the only place that I can, which is with me. And I can support other people in doing that work within them because that's the only place that they can do it. And once this energy begins to shift, then that's another story for another day. But I just wanted to come by and share this with you because, as I said, if you were in the thick of things, if you are in the depths of the mud of, in which the lotus blooms, I wanted you to know, perhaps offer you a different perspective of what you're doing there, and reassure you that you're exactly at the place that you're meant to be. And if you would like support, if you would like to accelerate your journey, there are people that have walked this journey and can help you, like myself, for instance. So I will put my, as always, I will put my contact information in this description of this video so you can reach out and um, we can chat, and you can schedule a free 20-minute consultation with me, and we can discuss how I might be able to help support you in this liberation process. All right. I'll talk to you guys real soon again. In the meantime, please remember what a valuable treasure you are. Bye.